If they don't succeed, then as a last resort, the military goes in. Our whole system in the United States is built on this empire. We've created an amazing empire since the end of World War II. It's the history's first truly global empire, created primarily without the military. So it's very subtle. When you create an empire, as the Romans did, or the Greeks, or the conquistadores, or the Portuguese, or the Germans, or the British Empire, when you create empires with military, everybody knows you're doing it. Your young people are going off to war. But when you do it as we've done it through economics, it's easy for a lot of people to be in denial and not to know that this is happening. And yet, all of our pension funds, all of our life savings and everything, the stock market is supporting this system. It's next to impossible to invest in any kind of a fund. I don't care what the fund says about its social responsibilities and so on. It's very, very difficult today in the United States to put money anywhere as a savings that earns back interest where you're not supporting these organizations. What are people to do about that? It's a very, very difficult question. Do you take all your money out and put it under the bed? That doesn't make sense either. What we really need to do is get to the roots of this system and let it be known that we no longer are going to accept this. We are no longer going to accept our corporations going over and exploiting other countries and poor people. We just are not going to accept it. We're not going to buy those goods and services. We need to get that word out there. We're not going to accept a situation where the heads of our government come out of many of these industries. It's absurd to think that the watchdogs for various industries came from the top of those industries, and after they leave government, they'll go back to those industries. I mean, that's just the grounds for corruption. It's a conflict of interest, clearly. We need to put an end to that sort of thing. We also need to put an end to the idea that chief executive officers of a corporation have the right to make, right now they're making on average 300 times more than their average employees. I mean, that's absurd. They're not contributing 300 times more than those employees. The system is basically rotten at the core, and corporations can certainly serve a purpose, but it needs to be a much more compassionate purpose that takes care of the employees, that takes care of the clients, the customers, and that takes care of the suppliers, and doesn't give such amazing windfall profits to a few very wealthy owners, people who primarily own the corporations, and the executives at the top. There's no reason for this. It's created a very difficult situation, and it's creating a world that's in crisis, a world that's angry, a world where 24,000 people starve to death or die of malnutrition every single day. I mean, that's just totally unacceptable. We need to change that. And I'm very optimistic that we are going to change it. We see tremendous cracks in the system. The fact that my book is selling so well, the fact that I'm talking on this television right now, and that there's so many people interested in this and concerned about it, tells us that people want change. And we're seeing tremendous cracks in the system all over the world. So the system's going to collapse. Empires never succeed in the long run. We know that. History tells us that every empire has always collapsed, and when it collapses violently. And so the alternative for us right now is to turn this thing around and say, look, we've created this global empire, but in the process we've also created tremendous resources. We've created tremendous channels of communication and distribution, and we can reverse the flow so that this empire is not just like a great octopus sucking resources from every corner of the world, but instead it can send out through those same tentacles, those same channels, it can send out compassion. It can send food to those who need food, or the means of producing food. Teach them how to produce food, and water, and clothes, and shelter. It'll be a first in the history of mankind for an empire to do that, and yet I think we're ready. And all the indigenous prophecies, there's prophecies from around the world that tell us that this is a very special time we've entered right now. All the indigenous cultures that I've worked with over the years predict that right now is a time when we have the potential for tremendous change, and I think we're feeling that happening. I think we can use these systems that we've set up to create something that truly reflects a deep-seated belief in the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all people around the world. You know, the United States' most sacred document talks about government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Right now we've got a government of the corporations, for the corporations, and by the corporations. We need to change that and embrace a worldwide concept of societies around the world, of the people, for the people, and by. I think there's a combination of things that are happening on many levels around the world right now. The anger that's spilling over into violence, like terrorism that's happening, is certainly having an impact. The people coming together as they did in Seattle in 1999, as they are, as they just did at the World Social Forum in Brazil, these have a tremendous impact. I know people at the World Bank and in big corporations that are absolutely sitting up and taking notice. And I think sometimes those people that go to these gatherings like Seattle in '99 walk away and think that they've been forgotten. They haven't been forgotten. That registers. It makes a huge impression. We have to remember that the people running these big corporations and the big banks are people. And they have children. And they have grandchildren. And most of them think of themselves, they all think of themselves as good people. And they want to do what's right, but they don't know what's right. And they're scared, and they're afraid that if they rock the boat, they'll simply lose their job, and they won't accomplish anything anyway. So it's all the social movements that support change and that insist upon change help these people see the right way and give them an excuse to move in that direction. So that if you're getting tremendous pressure, if you're a corporate executive, for example, and people are boycotting your organization, then you've got a real good excuse to go to your stockholders or your board of directors and say, look, we've got to change our ways. Whereas if nobody's boycotting you, if nobody's speaking out against your policies in the rainforest or with whales or whatever, if nobody's speaking out against that, you can just keep doing what you're doing. And if you try to change it, your stockholders would probably throw you out. But if somebody steps up to the plate and says, look, we're no longer going to buy the products from this company because of the way it's treating whales or the rainforest or polluting rivers, then it gives the executives an opportunity to go to their stockholders and say, look, we have to change in order to survive. So the social movements and the civil movements around the world, the social organizations, can have a very large impact. We need to keep speaking out constantly. I'd like to make it very clear that I'm extremely optimistic that things are going to change. When I wrote the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, I knew I was sticking my head in a noose. I was taking a big risk. I was sworn to secrecy. I put off writing this book for many years. As I tell in the book about some threats that I had and bribes not to write the book. And finally, when I wrote it, I knew I was taking a risk. But I am not suicidal and I'm not self-destructive. And so the only reason I would take such a risk is if I feel in my heart that we really can change. I have a 22-year-old daughter. I just turned 60. And I don't know whether I've got another day left of my life or whether I've got another 30 years left. But what I do know is that when I'm on my deathbed, I want to be able to look back and say, I spent the last years of my life making this a better world for my daughter and her generation of people her age and her children's age all over the world, not just in the United States. We can't do that. It's got to be for the whole world. And I really know that we can do this. Right now, I'd be leaving my daughter a worse world than the one I inherited from my parents. I don't want to see that happen. And I know that we've created these systems that we've created, this empire we've created, so that we can use it to move forward into a much more compassionate world, a world where we can share the resources and the ideologies of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all people, that we can share those with everyone around the world. There's no reason why people should have to flee other countries, like, say, Haiti or any other country, and go to the United States to find work, to find what they consider to be freedom. We can spread that. We can spread those concepts. We can make sure that people stay in their own beautiful countries and have these opportunities. But the fact of the matter right now, our corporatocracy is causing a lot of the problems in these countries. So the very first step is that we must clamp down and change this system that we've created, this banking system, this system of debt, this system of big corporations that are acting as bullies around the world. We must put an end to that. That's the first step, is putting an end to that. And as we do that, this will open up the world to a very different aspect. I think we truly have reached a point where we can realize the prophecies of the Mayas, of the Quechua, of the Bushmen and the Zulus, and of the Buginese people of Sulawesi, Indonesia. All of these prophecies say that we've reached a time where the people of the South and the people of the North, the people of the heart and the people of the brain or mind can come together and rise up to a new level of consciousness where we can bring our entire species to a new level of consciousness. I think we've truly reached that time, and we all need to push hard to make sure that it happens.